So I guess we're talking about my old buddy Ian Garry again, and the cringe fest continues. This week he's appeared on a couple of different interviews and he's banging on about who he's going to fight, and at this stage now it's starting to get beyond embarrassing. Wonderboy has turned him down, Kevin Holland has turned him down, Khamzat Chimaev has sneered and laughed at him. This dude is rambling on in every single interview about how God works in beautiful, mysterious ways, which I end up getting everything I want, and it doesn't seem to be working out for him. And on top of that, we have people like Michael Bisping laughing at him, actually sneering at his ability. I'll play that clip for you in a minute. Before I do, if you could hit subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. So I'm going to try work my way through a couple of different clips and a couple of different articles that I have here. The one that we're looking at now says Kevin Holland won't face Ian Garry because he doesn't fit the UFC blueprint for special fighters with Irish accents. And obviously he's talking about the Conor McGregor situation where Conor pulls the shots. We've seen Conor do it in the last few days with this whole fiasco with USADA. And it's like if the fight happens with Conor and Chandler in December, it will just make a complete and utter mockery of the whole thing. But he'll get away with it because he's a big star and the UFC like to push big stars. So whilst it is extremely frustrating to watch this behaviour play out, especially when other people attempt to play by the rules, we get preferential treatment for people like Conor McGregor, is quite disgusting. And this is exactly what he's talking about in terms of the Irish accent blueprint, but also the blueprint for up and coming fighters. And of course we've seen this recently with Paddy Pimblett, where he was getting fed these absolute and utter nobodies, all to propagate the idea of him being this huge star, which was never going to come to fruition because he never had the skill. I'm not saying that it's impossible for him to do well in the UFC in general, but he's not a star, man. He just isn't a star. There's a lot of nuances, a lot of luck, and a lot of pulling strings behind the scenes to make these sort of stars. We see it over and over again in terms of how, I guess, the fight game can be manipulated, especially by the UFC. And Kevin Holland isn't interested in playing this game, and it's not really working out for the new golden boy, Ian Garry. So Kevin Holland was on the Believe You Me podcast with Michael Bisping. Of course, the name on everybody's lips is Ian Machado Garry, so Michael Bisping puts the question towards him. As soon as Kevin Holland shuts down the idea of fighting the hype train that is Ian Garry, Bisping decides to get in on the spin. He jumps in, he piles on Ian Garry. I guess it's fair game to go after the cringe now. That's what he was thinking. Let's have a little look at the clip.
We were just talking about Ian Garry fighting Neil Magny at the weekend. What were your thoughts on that performance? Obviously he's doing big things. You know, he's got a big mouth like yourself, likes to talk shit, likes to stir the pot. Assuming you're victorious against Jack, do you see you guys potentially meeting one day? Because he is getting a lot of hype and attention, as you say.
They have a blueprint for guys like that, and I don't think I fit the blueprint. So, yeah.
Older guys, not in their prime, no knockout power, no door submissions. Is that what you're saying?
You know, just I don't think I fit the bill when it comes to what Ian Garry has planned, and you know.
Older guys, no knockout power, and no ability to darce choke somebody. So Michael Bisping inadvertently pulls back the veil and lets us see behind the curtain of what the UFC machine is. So going off this, we understand that the UFC are going to direct Ian Garry's career in a direction where these guys don't have knockout power. These guys aren't going to be serious grapplers that can choke and put him in a position where he's going to have to tap out. And they're going to keep on building him and building him until they get to the point where they have enough momentum behind them where they can make pay-per-view points or even sell out an arena off the hype train like they did with Paddy Pimblett and Molly McCann. And if it all falls apart, then we'll move on to the next hype train. That's how the UFC works. That's what Ian Garry is balls deep in the middle of, even though he's believing his own hype at this stage and he's believing his own cringe. And it's just another shutdown for this cringy guy. I mean, it's the second one that's happened this week. Wonderboy Thompson got called out by Ian Garry after the Neil Magny fight and immediately came out and said, nope, absolutely not. I'm not interested in fighting him. I'm not a gatekeeper. And again, we have to really look at the wording being used by Michael Bisping and by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson here, because it reveals so much. I'm not a gatekeeper. So what is a gatekeeper? A gatekeeper is an older guy who's got an established name, whose chin is probably gone and doesn't have it in the tank to beat an up-and-comer kid who has a bit of momentum behind it. And that's exactly what Michael Bisping described when he said, look, someone that doesn't have knockout power or the ability to choke you out. So we all know what's going on here. We know that these young fighters with the hype behind them are being fed these absolute and utter nobodies. But Ian Garry isn't taking no for an answer. Let's have a little look at this, right? So here we have Ian Garry call me out, but I want Kamaru Usman. So this story was flying all over the place the other day. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson turned down Garry immediately after he got the call out. It was interesting enough at the time, and now following on from that, Kevin Holland has done it. And we gotta wonder how many more people are actually gonna do this. There's gonna be a black and white dichotomy here where most fans of Ian Garry, I think there's like 16 of them, they're gonna say, oh yeah, all these guys are frightened to fight him because he's so powerful and awesome. And we talked about that in one of my other videos where there was YouTubers saying saying that he was unbeatable, that he would beat everyone in the welterweight division and maybe even move up and do the same at like 185. These regurgitated opinions are nothing new. We saw it last year with Brendan Schaub. He said that Khamzat Chimaev was going to be 170, 185, 205 and possibly even heavyweight champion. That's how good he was. And the guy's disappeared. We haven't heard from him since, except for hanging out with the likes of Kadyrov, and he gets a pass for that as well. So it's all about media manipulation, like, isn't it? These people think that Ian Garry can destroy everybody in the welterweight division, except for nobody wants to fight him because they don't fit the blueprint. Just as fans were getting excited about the clash between these two welterweight best strikers, again, this is propaganda. There was no fans excited for this fight. As I said, maybe 16 people were like, yeah, it'll be an okay fight, but I don't know. The 40-year-old was impressed with Gary's performance, but says he's focused on fighting former champion Kamaru Usman and is uninterested in facing somebody who just broke into the rankings. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, nicest guy in the UFC, just absolutely scalded Ian Garry there. It's like, dude, I don't even entertain the idea of fighting you. You just broke into the rankings. You're like number 11 after the Magny fight. Cool. You made yourself look like an asshole for the entire fight week going after Neil Magny, and after fight week you're making yourself look like a bigger one because now you're whinging and crying saying that all these fights are going to happen. You just watch. Great performance by Ian, Thompson told TalkSports.com. He did call me out. He's been calling me out like crazy this year. Another cringy moment there. It's like, stop calling me out, kid. No one's interested in fighting you. You know, he's moving up the rankings, and at this point, I don't want to be a gatekeeper. In other words, I've got knockout power, and I'm not part of the blueprint that's already laid out for this kid. So stop calling me out. My focus right now is with a guy who called me out and who was ranked number 1 for a very long time, and that was champion Kamaru Usman. That fight makes sense, especially for me, someone who is 40 years old and wants to go for one last title shot. Again, no interest in fighting Ian Garry. So what does Ian Garry think of this? Did he take on board what Stephen Wonderboy said, what Kevin Holland said about gatekeeping, knockout power? Did he take on board what Michael Bisping said in terms of, dude, they're not going to allow you to fight someone that's actually good because the hype train ends immediately when they do that? So did Ian take all that on board and come out with a really concise and intelligent answer? No, he said this.
We've seen the Wonderboy Kevin Holland fight. We've seen the way that the fans in that stadium erupted when those two started striking. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be mesmerizing. And it's going to be so fucking exciting for any single fan that has bought a ticket to the me and Wonderboy fight. That will happen. It's going to be amazing. And I believe that for Wonderboy, there is just much pull for me to fight Wonderboy as there is for Wonderboy to fight me. I'm young. I'm undefeated. I'm a prospect that everybody is talking about as potentially being a future champion. I'm a striker. So Wonderboy knows I'm not going to go out there and try to grab his legs and wrestle him.
So at this stage, you're watching interviews like this and you're thinking a bunch of different words. You're thinking embarrassing, delusional, mentally ill, cringe, all encompassed under one umbrella. So you've just been told that Wonderboy doesn't want to fight you. You can't accept it, and you're trying to convince yourself, maybe more so than the 16 fans that you have out there, that it's going to be an amazing fight and you're going to get so much work for your money if you come and watch us. And then to top it all off, he's cringily adding at the end that I promise I won't try to take you down. I'll stand up and fight because, you know, Wonderboy has turned down fights in the past from grapplers. The line of embarrassment has been crossed so long ago for Ian Garry, he might as well go all the way now.
Why not take it? Why not go out there, say yes, sign the dotted line, fight me over 5 rounds and prove who the best striker in the division is? The only reason he would say no is because he knows who's better.
The only reason he says no is because you're a nobody, you're a hype train, and everyone within the UFC community understands exactly what's happening with your sudden rise. And I don't want to keep repeating myself over and over again, but we've seen this over and over again. Please stop. Like, please just stop believing it. You know, give the fans and give the community a little bit of respect. We understand what's going on. There's only so much of Chael and Schaub and Bisping that we can actually take without forming our own opinions and actually seeing through the cloud of lies that keeps getting put upon us.
I am excited to fight Wonderboy, and I believe that this matchup will materialize. I believe that God works in very, very, very beautiful ways. And for some reason, I end up getting everything I want.
So there you have it. He's manifesting these things. He's materializing these things himself. God is working in a beautiful and interesting way, and I'm going to get everything that I want. Kind of the same delusion that Israel Adesanya was banging on about with his I manifested Dricus du Plessis beating Robert Whittaker. What the hell are you talking about, bro? I mean, this is where we are with this video. I don't want to keep talking about the guy, but this keeps coming up on my feed for some reason. When you're on social media, if you're on Twitter, all the MMA profiles are pushing Ian Garry down the throats of people. And the interactions are absolutely tiny. You go into the comment sections, people are laughing and joking and sneering at the cringe. And then you have the likes of Michael Bisping leaking what is actually going on behind the scenes. Then you have Kevin Holland, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, none of them are interested in fighting them. And still he's on the front of all the YouTube thumbnails. Still he's all over the Twitter feed. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why is this happening? And we already know because I just told you. Do me a favor, let me know what you think down below. Hit subscribe, share, do all that type of stuff. And hopefully we don't have to do another Ian Garry video. That would be great. Cheers.